And may I present the President of the United States, worshipful brother, George Washington.
Thank you for the gracious welcome you've tendered me. Believe me, I am delighted. The spirit that prompted me to extend my journey to include this singularly auspicious occasion found a response in your hearts. Since my acceptance into the worldwide brotherhood of Freemasonry, it may be of some interest to those of you so gathered, especially the lovely ladies, to learn some details of my Masonic background. I was initiated and entered apprentice in the lodge at Fredericksburg, Virginia, in November of 1752, passed to the degree of fellowcraft in March of 53, and in August of that same year was raised to the sublime degree of a Master Mason. During the years preceding the war, I was prevented by other labors from being as involved with the fraternity as my inclination urged. Fredericksburg being the lodge nearest my home at Mount Vernon, and that some 50 miles distance, was the nearest lodge closest to my home. But with the outbreak of war and the honor you, my fellow countrymen, conferred on me, I was able to come into closer touch with my Masonic brethren. What share Masonry played in that conflict that is now so happily past is indelibly inscribed in both the annals of Freemasonry and in the fabric of our new nation, for generations yet unborn to behold and emulate. In 1787, the Brethren of Alexandria Lodge number 39, then under Pennsylvania jurisdiction, petitioned the newly formed Grand Lodge of Virginia for a charter, and asked my permission to be named their first worshipful master under the new charter. My joy knew no bounds, and I readily acceded to their request. On April 28, 1788, Brother Edmund Randolph, Governor of the Commonwealth and Grand Master of Masons of Virginia, issued the petitioning brethren charter, constituting them as Alexandria Lodge number 22. Having previously bowed to the wishes of my brethren, I was named first on the charter and thus became their first worshipful master. Apparently, I discharged the obligations of that office in ample form because in December of that same year, I was unanimously re-elected to succeed myself. I occupied the chair of worshipful master for almost 20 months. Concurrent with attending the Brethren of Alexandria Lodge, I was inaugurated president of these new United States on April 30th, 1789. The weighty responsibilities of these two sacred offices and discharging the obligations thrust upon me oftentimes sorely tested my mental and physical capacities. I know that my dear wife Martha endured the same feelings of loneliness that you wives of lodge masters and lodge brethren know only too well. But endure she did, and extended me her solace and understanding in all circumstances. The old charges and ancient landmarks of speculative masonry, originally written in 1723 and amended in 1738, a most important charge, resolves against the conversation of all politics, as what never conduce to the welfare of the lodge and never will. An equally important charge to all Masons is stated as such. A Mason is obliged by his tenure to obey the moral law, and if he rightly understands the art, he will never be a stupid atheist or an irreligious libertine. But though in ancient times a Mason was charged in every country to be of the religion of that country or nation, whatever it was, 'tis now thought more expedient only to bind them to that religion in which all men agree, leaving their particular opinions to themselves, that is, to be good men and true, or men of honor and honesty by whatever denominations or persuasions they may be distinguished, whereby Masonry becomes the center of union and the means of conciliating true friendship among those who might have otherwise remained at a perpetual distance. I perceived some admiring glances directed at this beautiful Masonic apron, which I wear only on occasions of special significance, such as when I was appointed Grand Master Pro Tem of the Grand Lodge of Maryland, and when I laid the cornerstone of our new Capitol in Washington. It was crafted by the gracious Marquis de Lafayette and presented to me in proper ceremony by her husband, General Lafayette, that gallant young French nobleman who so unselfishly departed his country, his family, his vast estate and fortune, to journey to these shores to offer his services in our struggle against independence, against the tyranny of King George III. I can say unhesitatingly that during all the dark days of that mighty struggle, and none were more dark than those at Valley Forge, this young Masonic brother was a pillar of strength at my right hand, and his friendship and this apron shall ever be treasured among my dearest possessions, a memorial to my Masonic unity and service. Another apron, which limited baggage space precluded my bringing, is also particularly cherished by me. It is passing strange that it was embroidered for me by some Roman Catholic nuns in a convent in Nantes, France, and presented to me by brothers Watson and Casole, also in Nantes, who were confidential agents of our government during the Revolution. I would like to share with you some experiences of American espionage during the Revolution. Our thinking in the beginning of the war was one of mightiness. We felt that the war with England would consist of a full-scale battle where the American force would overwhelm the British and thus bring a swift end to the war. Well, the British sent a mighty army and handed us several defeats in our several battles in New York. We developed a new strategy, prolonged the war and avoided general action, created a blueprint of strategic thought enabling a weak American force to combat a more powerful opponent. Espionage would be a major element of this new system. My knowledge of how intricate espionage was woven into the British military political fabric extends from my extensive knowledge of colonial officials, generals and colonels since my early youth. Shortly after taking command of the Continental Army in 1775, I was not entirely surprised to learn that our Surgeon General, Dr. Benjamin Church, was informing the British of our every move in our camps in Cambridge. However, in the spring of 1776, after relocating our operations to New York, I was quite taken aback to learn of a plot for my association by one of my very own lifeguards, a man named Thomas Hidden. Well, my first act of espionage was a matter of disinformation. Shortly after taking command of the Army, I was informed that our gunpowder magazine consisted of 36 barrels. This amounted to no more than 9 rounds of shot per man for the entire Army. I immediately dispatched spies into British-held Boston to spread the rumor that our gunpowder magazine consisted of 1,800 barrels. This very same rumor I had spread throughout our own camps. In chaotic New York, as we were struggling with a mighty and aggressive opponent, a depleting and deserting militia, and a strategic plan which could not be implemented, I had lost control of the intelligence operation. Captain Nathan Hale was dispatched on an intelligence gathering mission behind enemy lines in September of 1776. He was doomed almost from the beginning, as he had no contact with high command, no training as a spy, no disguise, and an almost impossible task of discovering what intelligence he could, wherever he went. I was not made aware of Hale's mission, as I was preoccupied with engineering a plan to burn down New York City. I was strictly forbidden by the Continental Congress of laying any harm to the city. I looked the other way as Hale's regiment, who had specialized in explosives, slipped into the city on September 21st. The ensuing fires destroyed Trinity Church and 600 houses, causing no little discomfort to the British and the thousands of loyalist refugees who had crowded into the city. Hale's timing was disastrous, as he was caught that very same day. Several incendiaries had been caught and hanged on the spot. Hale faced the same treatment. No trial, just a swift, humiliating death. His final words still echo through the valleys of history. I regret that I had but one life to give for my country. Numerous mischievous wags in the colonial state were certain of merriment to themselves and some discomfort to me that I wore dentures fashioned from wood. Please allow me to allay these erroneous assertions and publicly reveal that, ill-fitting as they are, my dentures are made from the unlikely combination of cattle, hippopotamus, elephant, and walrus teeth. Upon arriving here this evening, I could not help observing a goodly number of folks with Irish names. Perhaps those of you recently arrived from that Emerald Isle will be gratified to know that I have unbounding respect for the Irish. They have no peers as fighting men, and more than 1,494 soldiers in this revolution fought for us, and they were Irish. I had an adjutant who was a rather bookish fellow and had bent for statistics, and he took that survey and proved that there were 494 soldiers named Murphy in the Revolution and 695 soldiers named Kelly under my direct command. To bolster the sagging spirits of our gallant troops at Valley Forge, we had a celebration of sorts on March 17th, 1778, and I ordered an extra ration of rum for every man in camp. This, of course, was met with hearty approbation by Irish and non-Irish alike. No estate in the United America is more pleasantly situated than my home in Mount Vernon. It lies on a high, dry, and healthy country on one of the finest rivers in the world. This place, so dear to my heart, came to me by way of my half-brother Lawrence. Originally titled Epswasson, it was later rechristened Mount Vernon by Lawrence to perpetuate the remembrance of British Admiral Vernon, whom Lawrence came to admire during his involvement in the English-Spanish War. Propriety obliges me to acknowledge that I do operate a still at Mount Vernon for the distilling of corn and rye whiskey. Although a restrained consumer of alcoholic spirits myself, I offer this observation concerning imbibing: the vile practice of swallowing the whole ration of liquor in a single draught is to be avoided by mixing with water. In that case, in which becoming very pernicious, it will become refreshing and salutary. An evil companion to that of imbibing alcohol is the smoking or chewing of tobacco. Notwithstanding the bountiful tobacco harvest in the Commonwealth of Virginia and the adoption of one or both of these practices by many of my companions and field hands, I consider them to be disgusting and vile habits, productive of neither advantage nor health. Well, if my mother had not been an aggressive, strong-willed, domineering woman, I'm confident I would not be standing here speaking to you this evening. When I was a lad of 14, I was a British subject, and proud of it. My family had been loyal British subjects for more than 600 years. During the summer of my 14th year, a British man of war anchored in the Potomac near my home in Virginia. The sight of that giant war vessel flying the Union Jack stirred my adventurous heart. Right then and there, I decided I would join up in the British Navy and fight. I was all ready to go. My sea chest was on board, and the ship was set to sail in the early morning. I could hardly wait to start living a daring life. When my mother learned of my impulsive act, which I carefully concealed from her, she became highly distraught, hastened aboard the ship and collared me. She reprimanded me in no uncertain terms, ordered me to secure my sea chest and get back home where I belong. Oh, I did precisely what she ordered. I've oftentimes wondered just what fate history would have had in store for me had I been successful in my attempt to leave these shores for a career in the British Navy. I know that all present share with me the numbing shock of disbelief to learn that a once honored member of our beloved fraternity possibly be guilty of a black and dastardly crime of betraying his country to the enemy. Yes, my throat constricts almost to the point of rendering me mute, merely to mention the despicable name Benedict Arnold, a name that will live in infamy so long as honest and decent men inhabit this great nation. What force this sight of heaven could possibly have unsettled his mind and loyalty, sufficiently enough for him to divulge to the enemy our posts and fortifications at West Point? Our loving God has not made known to me. His name will be stricken from the rolls of Freemasonry, and he no longer holds citizenship in our new nation. Oh yes, he now serves beneath the cross of St. George, but that is not his flag. As his feet are fated to tread a dreary path, they will lead him to the grave. And through all his journey, his name will be a hissing and a byword. And as he is a brigadier general in the British Army, his orders may carry him to some far-flung post on the other side of the earth. And at a moment when he is least expecting, cross some rampart or flying beyond the stretch of sunlit sea. His eyes may fall upon the stars and stripes of America, and that is not his flag. His feet are fated to tread a dreary path. They will lead him to the grave, and through all his journey his name will be a hissing and a byword. For in all the lands beneath the sun, there is no place where masonry abides a traitor. Let me say what must never be forgotten. Treason is a crime over which masonry casts no mantle of charity. John Adams, that wily, crafty, masterful politician from Boston, was principally responsible for my being named Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. Prior to this, the burden of the war was borne mainly by the northern colonies. Adams and certain members of the Continental Congress conjectured that with a Southern commander-in-chief, more Southern money, men, and material might be forthcoming to support the war. In his agile mind, Adams deemed that I was that Southerner. I hope I have fulfilled his expectations. Well, I have no doubt you worthy settlers in these western territories think it truly an act of providence that the colonies waged and successfully concluded the revolution against Great Britain with a makeshift form of government as were the Articles of Confederation. As a person with only a minimum intelligence could easily discern, these articles were totally inadequate for the proper government of a people, seeking absolute guarantees of freedom such as no government had ever extended to its citizens. Frankly speaking, ladies and brethren, your peers in the colonies found themselves floundering in a sea of chaos, uncertainty, and turmoil. Many prominent leaders harbored apprehensions that no more than an ill-advised rash act perpetrated by one colony against the person or property of another could ignite anew the fires of armed conflict. Our enemy in the revolution recently ended had vanished beyond the sea. Now, other internal enemies had to be conquered at home. And so to assure that the lives and property lost in the war with England was not for naught, 55 delegates met in Philadelphia in the summer of 1787 to formulate a system of government strong enough to establish authority and to direct this young and growing nation for centuries to come. That this convention, with its widely divergent views and conflicting interests, ever met with success is still a source of wonder and amazement to me. However, the maxim that order had to replace chaos was foremost in our intellects and deliberations. As 13 of the delegates were Masons, I felt that the calming influence of these brethren would help produce a document in which all freedom-loving people could admire. I originally turned down the request of my fellow Virginians to serve as a delegate to this convention because of my advanced rheumatism, because of the exigencies of my other commitments, particularly the management of my plantation. Just as important as these, I had made a solemn promise to my dear wife, Martha, that at the cessation of my public career, that I would retire to Mount Vernon, spend the rest of my days with her, living the life of a country gentleman. However, I eventually succumbed to the blandishments of my neighbors and became a delegate, among whom were such noted patriots as Benjamin Franklin, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, Edmund Randolph, and so many others. I was doubly honored to have been named Virginia delegate and later presiding officer of the convention. Brother Benjamin Franklin, a past Grand Master of Pennsylvania, greatly influenced and assisted me with his indomitable faith and enlightened philosophy of government. And so precisely at 3 o'clock in the afternoon of September 17th, 1787, after 115 days of intense deliberation, 39 delegates solemnly stepped to the dais to sign the document that we had agonized and labored over. An hour later, the signing completed. All of us, exhilarated but though bone tired, retired to the city tavern for a feast of roast fowl. Notwithstanding the toilsome journey our young nation is traveling, fraught with unforeseen circumstances and overcoming each through trial and error, our road ahead remains treacherous and unknown because, in essence, we are still a young and struggling people. I dream of a day when we shall be a great nation rather than a mere confederation of states, a nation one and indivisible, whose duty and delight it shall be through all the centuries to display to the world the beauties of true and perfect liberty. It may be that in the coming years, the poor and oppressed of many alien peoples will flock to this free land, where they will seek those freedoms and opportunities in which all men inherently yearn. It may be that ignorance, vice, and shameful greed may seek to assail our institutions, to destroy our liberties, to poison the fountain of justice and equity, and to enslave us in political servitude and bondage. My analysis of the history of nations informs me that to be prepared for war is the most effectual way of preserving peace. But so long as Freemasonry shall stand united in the bonds of brotherhood, loyalty, and freedom, the stalwart defender of liberty and law, this great republic shall endure in honor. Well, I've overextended the time allotted for this visitation. As my aides and I depart for Mount Vernon tomorrow, it behooves us to retire to our quarters post-haste as we leave at dawn for the strenuous trip. Before leaving, may I give you this admonition. Observe good faith and justice toward all nations. Cultivate peace and harmony with one another. And may religion and morality enjoin this conduct. God bless you, and God bless these new United States. Thank you. George Washington, thank you, worshipful. I'd like to invite everybody upstairs on behalf of our worshipful master and our lodge for some refreshment. And I'll pose with anybody.